Hi, everyone. This is Melissa Tonneson. I'm embarking on a project that I've long wanted to try, and that is to create a kind of commentary track for some of, at least one of, Shirley Temple's films. Um, so far, none of her DVDs have been released with any such track, and it doesn't look like any will in the future or the foreseeable future. If they do, they can call me. But in the meantime, I thought I'd try it. I am going to do my best. I'm going to try to do it in different chunks because I don't know if I can do it in one fell swoop. And we'll see how it goes. So, welcome to my first effort, which is 1938's Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, starting with the 20th Century Fox fanfare. This, of course, is the colorized version. It was originally, of course, shot in black and white. Um, Shirley Temple and Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. You can see her name, of course, is over the title, as it should be, because in 1938 she was still riding high as the top box office champ, um, and rightfully so. Let's talk a little bit about suggested by the Kate Douglas Wiggin story, which is the source material or tiny slivers of the source material on which this film is based. Kate Douglas Wiggin wrote the children's novel Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm in 1903. Kate Douglas Wiggin was a teacher. She also was interested in training teachers especially of the very young. In her book, which was set in 19 which was written in 1903. So clearly it did not have a radio background or a radio setting, as does Shirley's Rebecca. As you can see here, we begin in a radio station. In the original novel, Rebecca Rowena Randall is going to live with her two aunts, Aunt Miranda and Aunt Jane, one being nice, one being stern. I imagine it's the Aunt Miranda character who's a stern one. Rebecca is leaving Sunnybrook Farm, not going to, and she's leaving because her father has died, and her mom has her hands full with her siblings, so she's going to stay with her aunts so that she can have better opportunities. And that's about all that remains of the story, Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, in the film of Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. The names, Rebecca, Miranda, and Sunnybrook. Here we have the beginning of the film establishing the fact that they are looking for a child, a girl singer, to perform as Little Miss America in their Crackly Grain Flakes special or program. We have Randolph Scott, who was well known at the time, would continue to work in the 30s and 40s, often in Westerns. Randolph Scott would appear in Shirley the following year as Monty the Mountie in Susannah of Sunnybrook Farm. Right now, he's being told off by his boss because they've been auditioning girl singers and none of them have been satisfactory. Um, Here we have Orville Smithers, played by none other than Jack Haley, known as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. Jack Haley, of course, played with Shirley 2 years prior in 1936's Poor Little Rich Girl. Here we have Shirley as Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, although she's not of the farm yet. And we have the incomparable William Demarest as her uncle, Uncle Harry Kipper, or her stepfather. She calls him Uncle Harry. He's most known as playing another famous uncle, Uncle Charlie, in the TV sitcom My Three Sons. The receptionist is played by Dixie Dunbar, an actress of some note in minor parts in the 30s. I'm always struck by her hairstyle in this film, which happens to be popular hairstyle in the late 30s. I've seen Judy Garland sporting it as Betsy Booth, and Phyllis Brooks, who opened the movie with her song Happy Ending, um, will also wears that hair. Um, I don't know why it was so popular, but it was. Speaking of hairstyles, you can see Rebecca Shirley is wearing her signature curls, but by 1938, at least as far as I'm concerned, you can start to see that Shirley's really outgrowing that little girl curl hairstyle, which works well for the story because those of you who've seen it will know that later on she'll wear two ponytails or two pigtails. And her new hairdo was much ballyhooed in the press. The signature curls were getting a different look. The film, as I said, opened up with Phyllis Brooks, who sang Happy Ending. One of the original um, treatments in a script treatment said that Phyllis Brooks was going to sing that song in a French accent and then be joined by the Peter sisters. That, of course, didn't happen. Shirley herself recorded a track of Happy Ending, which did not appear in the movie. Probably was going to be one of the songs that she sang later on in the film when she was starring on the radio hour. But in the beginning of the film, they're auditioning girls, and we see here, the second girl we see is Flora Bell, who's also singing or trying to sing You've Got to Eat Your Spinach Baby. Kind of an inside joke because that was a Shirley Temple song. Shirley Temple and Jack Haley's song, sung in 1936's Poor Little Rich Girl. Of course, Shirley and Jack sang it a whole lot better than the girls here, including Flora Bell. Flora Bell is played by Mary McCarty, who actually went on to do some other roles and played the adult Mother Goose in 1961's Babes in Toyland. Who knew? At this point, actually, right before this point, there was a deleted scene where Flora Bell and her father got into a scuffle with Uncle Harry, and the Flora Bell's father is referred to as the mug, and he says, "Step aside, we was foist," and asks, and Jack Haley has to be the referee of sorts. Uncle Harry says, "Watch out, you big palooka," and there's a little bit of dialogue between them. Stills exist from that scene, but it did not make it into the film. Here we have Shirley as Rebecca singing her first song. You'll hear this song quite often in the film, called An Old Straw Hat. And yes, Shirley as Rebecca will wear a straw hat later on in the film, as well as the overalls and the old pair of shoes. As I said before, here we have Jack Haley, who played with Shirley in Poor Little Rich Girl, which incidentally was also a film set in the arena of the radio, and another film based on a book that may have had more in common with its source material than this one, but not all that much. Poor Jack Haley is getting a little overwhelmed. Let's talk for a minute about the director. The director here of Rebecca Sunnybrook Farm is Alan Dwan. Alan Dwan would also go on to direct Shirley in Young People, her last film as a Fox child star, and had already directed her in the film previous to this, 1937's Heidi. back behind the scenes shots of those films. You can see Alan Dwan is a um, very noticeable presence on the set. Um, I've read interviews where he was quoted, I don't know how accurately, he was quoted as saying when he was assigned the role or assigned to direct Heidi, he said he knew that Shirley was slipping in the ratings, and I say that in quotes. And someone said, "Oh, just see what you can do with it." And it just doesn't seem very possible to me, or very likely, because in 1937, Shirley was still riding high in her popularity, still the number one box office draw in the world, and certainly was not a cast off kind of an assignment to be given. Here we have Phyllis Brooks, who opened the movie. Um, Phyllis is playing Lola Lee, and her work in this film is, well, her role in this film, I wouldn't say her work, her role in this film, I think, is far superior to the role that she'd have in Shirley's next film, which is Little Miss Broadway. She's given a whole lot more to do here, and also given some numbers, and is just quite fun to watch, especially when she plays off Jack Haley, which we'll see in a little bit. Of course, she's smoking because that was not a taboo in 1938. It was what many shishi people and non-shishi people did at the time. I think I'll take this moment to stop for a minute, um, and I'll resume in just a moment. All right, I've rewound it a little bit so I can get my bearings. You see, Shirley or Rebecca has not gotten the job, or actually, she has gotten the job, but due to a mix up, as there always are in these kind of films, she doesn't know it. And as she and Uncle Harry leave to go home, he informs her that they have no home to go to, that the landlady has locked them out. The home that Shirley or Rebecca, the address that she gives, is actually in the vicinity of what's now the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in Manhattan. At the time, I don't know if it was an apartment building or not, but that's what it is today. Now you can see, if you watch carefully, that in these scenes, her curls are very short and tight under her little beanie hat, whereas earlier in the film, when I was talking about the length of them and how she would be wearing pigtails later on, they were much longer and looser. You'll notice that if you're a curl connoisseur, as you watch many of Shirley's films. Um, it's always interesting to me to look for those kinds of things. Let's talk a little bit more about Randolph Scott. Randolph Scott was an actor from 1928 to 1962. He made over 100 films, and of those 100 films, 60 were westerns. So he became well known for the western genre. Um, he was married at least twice that I know of, but also maintained a very close relationship with fellow actor Cary Grant. They lived together for some time in what people refer to as the bachelor house, or something along those lines. And of course, there was speculation about the nature of their relationship. Um, but both men were married more than once. And so I don't think anything has ever been truly um, concluded about their relationship. Here we have actress Phyllis Brooks as Lola Lee smoking, which of course was not a taboo in those days. In fact, it was smoking was looked on as something um, that elegant people partook of. And if you notice, Randolph Scott's character is also smoking. Floribel's father, referred to in one of the scripts as the Mug, is played by Paul Hurst. And as I said before, Mary McCarty is playing Floribel. As I said before, she, as well as the girl before her, were singing "You've Got to Eat Your Spinach, Baby." There are a lot of references and reminders of former Shirley Temple films in this one. Um, kind of interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about that later when she sings a reprise or a melody, or I'm sorry, a medley of her famous, more of her some of her famous songs, and how they kind of really don't fit into her character in this film. But there's quite a little bit of old home week and inside jokes in Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. Let's talk a moment about Jack Haley, who I believe started out in vaudeville and often played a kind of a bumbling character. That is, until he played his signature role in 1939's Wizard of Oz. Um, Jack Haley played the Tin Man. Jack Haley was not the first choice for the Tin Man. In fact, his predecessor, Buddy Epson, started filming under the first director, Richard Thorpe, and he was allergic to the aluminum dust that he breathed in, ended up in an iron lung, Buddy Epson did, and so could not continue filming. They ended up reshooting all of the initial, I think it was first 2 weeks worth of footage. And then Jack Haley took over. And the rest is, at least for most of us, we consider as cinematic history. Here they've arrived at Aunt Miranda's, who lives in Sunnybrook Farm. Of course, in the book, Aunt Miranda and her sister don't live on a farm. They live in a brick house in town. So I guess they can give her a better life. I guess that's part of, or one part that's still a little bit the same, where Aunt Miranda wants to give Rebecca a better life, in this case, one away from radio and showbiz. Aunt Miranda here is one of my absolute favorite characters in all of Shirley's films, played by the instantly recognizable Helen Wesley. Helen Wesley was a fixture in Shirley Temple films. She played the hilarious Mrs. Hope in 1936's Stowaway. She played the quiet and gentle blind Anna in 1937's Heidi. But her best role, as far as I'm concerned, is here as Aunt Miranda. Another old friend of Shirley's, if you will, is Gloria Stewart. Gloria Stewart is playing Cousin Gwen here. Gloria played along with Shirley in 1936's Poor Little Rich Girl. Um, I would say probably her role is a little beefier in Poor Little Rich Girl, or at least a little sassier. But I think Gloria Stewart brings a little bit of sass to most of the roles that she's played. Of course, more modern audiences will know her as Old Rose in James Cameron's film of the Titanic. All right, sometimes you're going to see that I stop the film to gather my thoughts and notes, and then I might rewind it a little bit, um, which is what I've done here. We were talking about Gloria Stewart and her most notable in recent years work as Old Rose in Titanic.
Quite a burden. Of course, I'm only too glad to take care of the child, although she really isn't my own, you might say. But lately, I've had several.
I'm putting up the sound just so you can hear some of her best lines.
Your hands. I'd hardly put it that way, Miranda, but that's the general idea. Listen to me, Harry Kipper. I'll take Rebecca, but only on one condition. You've got to promise to let me have her for good, so I can give her the right kind of upbringing. I don't want her to come to a bad end like her mother. Now, your sister didn't do so bad. You're just against show people. Show people? If Bess hadn't eloped with that opera singer who died without leaving a cent, she wouldn't have had to marry a no good like you. Now, Miranda. Don't you now Miranda me? Will you promise not to come back
The
here
best part, don't you now, Miranda
it's
me.
a sacrifice, but I'll go for anything that's good for Rebecca.
As I said before, Helen Wesley was a fixture in Shirley's films. I forgot to mention her role as Mrs. Drew in 1936's Dimples. She was born Henrietta Remsen Messerol Manning, something along those lines, quite a handful of a name. And she was born in Brooklyn. And in 1934, she played another famous aunt, this time opposite Anne Shirley, who was known as Dawn O'Day right before the filming of Anne of Green Gables. Right now, for the first time, we see Shirley's hairstyle. You'll notice that in these early scenes, her hair, the ponytails are behind her ears. Later on, they'll be more covering her ears. I don't know if that was a conscious choice or not. Now, before the pig squealing scene, there was a scene that was deleted where Shirley meets some chicks and holds them up to her cheek. She meets Aloysius in a different way. There's a production number with scarecrows and a whole different scenario. Watch for a moment here. Look at the shoes. They do not match the shoes that Shirley is wearing. Shirley's wearing strapped shoes. Most likely that insert shot was of Shirley's stand-in, Mary Lou Isley. Also, probably not Shirley there either. I doubt they would let her trip and fall, and that's why you can see that they cut away. Also earlier, when there's an insert shot of Rebecca holding the pig, those don't look like Shirley's hands to me. Again, I'm going to say that they were shot at the same time with the shoes and done by Mary Lou. Mary Lou, of course, was a friend of the family, or a daughter of the friend of the family, took over the role of stand-in from Marilyn Grannis, who was Shirley's original stand-in. Shirley and Mary Lou remained lifelong friends. Here we have two more characters, also previously seen in Shirley's films. Here's Slim Somerville, and he is Homer Busby in this film. He played in 1936 as Captain January, as Captain Nazaro. And of course, you see Bill Robinson, known to many as Bojangles, and known to Shirley as Uncle Billy. Close, close friends. This will be their penultimate, second to last film together, the last one being just around the corner later on in 1938. Now you can see Shirley's pigtails are covering a little bit further over her ears. Now this sequence where the pig runs away and Rebecca trips over his legs, Tony's legs, and then he falls into the well, was a rewrite. Originally, she was to meet him in a very unusual way. She was on his property and he was circling in a plane and it landed nearby her. And she was surprised by it. Quite a different and probably not safe type of meeting. So they changed it to this. Also, she, in an original treatment, she was to meet Homer Busby, his man of the house, or Guy Friday, earlier in the film. And she was to meet Aloysius, played by Bill Robinson, earlier in the film. They were loafing around, I guess you would say, and went into a song and dance. Homer Slim Somerville playing the kazoo, and there was a production number where there were supposed to be 12 men dressed as scarecrows to work out the dance numbers, I guess. And at the end, Aunt Miranda came out and admonished Rebecca for singing trashy songs. And there are some stills, not of the production number itself, but of her with other farm hands and Bill and Slim earlier in the film. And there's also some snippets of it in the trailer, as well as the scene where she's holding the two chicks. None of those scenes end up in the finished film. Here she sings yet again, Old Straw Hat. This little dance step that they did to begin the number was known as Pickin' Berries, according to a little newspaper article I came across. In 2015, a year after Shirley died, her items were auctioned off. And before they were auctioned off, there was a around the country tour of select pieces of her wardrobe. And among them was the Rebecca outfit with a replacement hat. It was interesting to note that the Rebecca outfit was purposely distressed and stained to make it look like they were a worn out pair of old overalls. Even though we think of Shirley as the farmer girl, when we think of her role in, or I think of her role in Rebecca Sunnybrook Farm, for the most part, she wears a variety of really, really cute dresses, some of which came to the auction and some of which did not. This particular one did not come to auction. Um, when I first saw the costumes when they were on display at the Morris Museum in Morristown, New Jersey, in May of 2015. Of course, there was an emotional response on my part because for me, Shirley was. It was always about the movies with Shirley, and seeing those costumes was just overwhelming, particularly because I'd never seen them in color. Yes, some of her films have been colorized, but never or rarely accurately. Um, and it was just incredible to see not only the vibrant colors of her costumes, but also the impeccable shape that they were still in. And that's all due to Shirley's mother, Gertrude Temple. In the film, um, Tony Anthony Kent has gone up to his farm in what I imagine is upstate New York, since they keep referring to down to the city. He has quite a palatial place there. If you look at the sets, particularly that sweeping, you can see it right there by Slim Somerville, sweeping staircase, foyer, and then this well-appointed living room. The set directors in, um, well, really most films of the time, but particularly Shirley's, went to spared no expense and detail in appointing just the right furnishings. There's that puff of curls, also sported by Gloria Stewart there. Let's talk a little bit more about Bill Robinson. Bill Robinson, of course, is known as a premier tap dancer. In fact, his birthday is celebrated every year as National Tap Dance Day. And I believe it's even observed internationally now as well. Um, Bill got his start in New York on the stage and did experience segregation and racism, but also broached some of those barriers. Was really the toast of New York. And when he came to Hollywood to make films, he was noted for his dancing. His first film with Shirley was 1935's The Little Colonel. And in that film, he and Shirley did what's considered the first interracial dance number in film history. Their iconic dance up and down the staircase in Lionel Barrymore's The Grandfather's colonial home. Um, when Shirley first met Bill Robinson, um, she asked to call him Uncle Billy. She called a lot of her favorite co-stars uncle. It was not a derogatory term at all. I know she referred to Lionel Barrymore's Uncle Lionel. Um, but Uncle Billy was the most special of the uncles. And his response to her was, "Yes, you can call me Uncle Billy, but then I get to call you darling." In 1935, they made The Little Colonel, as I just said. The success of that spurred them on to make The Littlest Rebel later on in that year. And this is their third film together, Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. And their last film would come at the end of 1938 in Just Around the Corner. Um, in each film, there's at least one dance number between the two, and they are some of um, dance history's greatest moments, at least according to those of us who are fans of both Shirley and Uncle Billy. All right, at this point in the film, They are realizing that Rebecca, who has come to live next door, um, oh, you can see right there if you looked closely that that was definitely not Jack Haley, but a stunt double. Um, Unknown caller. Hello? Oh, pardon me. Let's resume. They're realizing that Rebecca is actually the same girl singer who auditioned in the city for the program. How coaccidental, as they would have said in Little Miss Marker. And so Shirley singing for one last time, Old Straw Hat. There you can see the crackly grain flakes are have spilled all over his desk. Originally, the product was supposed to be corn flakes, but because Shirley had a endorsement deal with Quaker puffed white rice and those cereals, they didn't want competition, and so they decided to change the name to Crackly Grain Flakes. I imagine that in 1938, as filming for this was going on, Jack Haley was getting ready to begin work. Maybe was already working over at MGM, um, preparing for his role as the Tin Man in Oz, because that was filmed. Much of it was filmed in 1938 and released in August of 1939. I always found it interesting that they refer to the radio shows as programs. I've always pronounced a program. I would watch a TV program. I think we'll stop this now, and that'll be the first part, and we will resume with part two later.